Lego Alex and welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, hope you enjoy the video. So here we are, the review of the radio station old build by Brickative. So as always, all the links to both Brickative and this specific old build are all down below in the description box, so if you're curious or wanting to do this old build yourself, that is where all the information is for you. As I started building this on the channel on a live stream, I realised we need to talk about this because this is going to be a really interesting build, and it is very beautiful and interesting, and especially whilst building it I had a lot of thoughts, like a lot of thoughts. If you're familiar with my channel, you know this is not my first rodeo. I have done many old builds before, so I kind of feel like I have a frame of reference. And if you also know me relatively well, you know that I am really super fussy about my old builds, and I have a lot of requirements. Now, why did I build this old build? In particular, this is an old build of the police station, and there is various old builds that exist for the police station. I was actually originally going to be doing the Daily Press old build by Festanert. I will insert an image here. The reason I didn't end up doing that one is because I left it to my very lovely Discord members, thank you for supporting me, and they all decided very unanimously that they would like to see me build this one in particular. I think this is a really cool building, and the radio station itself, this facade, really drew me in, and I thought it looked really good. Considering where I wanted to sit in the city, I was also kind of interested in a corner build anyway. So my initial impressions before I started building this was that I really loved this bit, but I wasn't hugely a fan of the actual apartment block that you got on the side. And actually I have more in-depth reasons why I now have a similar opinion. So if we're just moving it like this facade, I have to just be super honest with you, is stunning. My particular favourite bit during building was creating the wording of the L radio here. Honestly, so ingenious how this wording was created. Just bear in mind that this old build is created only using pieces from the original police station. The fact that somebody can take all of those pieces and then come up with a thing like this is just incredible. However, it became really obvious as I was building this that when this was designed, or at least it felt really obvious as I was building this, that the design focus was really on this bit of the build. The rest was kind of just like whatever we have left over. This really, and I especially think this top floor, really is where we get the most cohesive and absolutely beautiful detail from the exterior, but also nice interior. I really like the combination of the tan and the reddish brown. It's not something we see in the modulars before, so it still makes it look really nice and unique and stand out. And actually, even though this detail here of the columns is similar on the police station original build, it's different enough in this way that it looks like a really separate building, which I think is really important in an old build. In my opinion, what makes an old build really good to me is when the original function of the building is completely changed and we get essentially just a completely different building. I really don't love the old builds that essentially still have the same function or still use similar functions in the building, even though it's an old build. I obviously am totally appreciative that this is a really difficult thing to do. However, I still have opinions about it. I'm not necessarily saying that I can do it better if I tried. I haven't tried, so I can't be sure. So this facade I feel is really unique, beautiful, polished, delightful. But let me move to this building. And this building was my original worry, and having built it in real life, there is some things that make me like it more and also some bits that make me dislike it more than I originally thought. So let's start with the things that make me like it more. I really like this window here. It's created with a column, like a 1x2x5 trans column, and I think the window works really well. It looks really good. It adds the detail on the side that you really need. I also really love these fire escapes. They really give it a very industrial, sort of New Yorkish type feel to it. It's really not something that I have anywhere else in the city, with these fire escapes at the front. And yeah, I don't know, I really like them. I think they're really good. I think they would look even better if they were black, but obviously as this is an old build, they can only use the pieces that already exist in this mock. But yeah, this is probably one of my favourite details of this building. Now, what I really don't like about this building in particular is the fact that it's still kind of a donut shop. So there is still, in the bottom level, in the interior, is still a donut shop. It's not as pretty because some of the things that make it look polished in the original build are needed elsewhere as parts. So it's kind of like an improvised donut shop, and I really wish we just had a different function for that room. It really lets me down because I feel like I get extra critical when we're getting a similar function in an old build to the original build, because inevitably you're always going to be improvising with different parts, and therefore it's never going to look as polished in the original build. So I'd much rather that the designer move away from the original intention of the building. What I also really dislike so much is these blue end bits to the canopy over here. Like the awning just, I really don't like it, guys. I'm really sorry. I know I'm going to be critical, but I like the original awning. I think it's a really cool design. Obviously there wasn't enough of the original awning to make it bigger, so the designer used these blue slope pieces, which is effectively the only things you can really use for it, and I just really don't like it. I just think that blue is so random. It just doesn't work. I really wish that hadn't happened. Also, we get this tile design in front of this donut shop / cafeteria, which is a bit random. Now, I feel like I'm slightly more forgiving with this because the original build of the police station isn't a corner, so you just have way less tiles than you would need to make this a really polished, beautiful looking corner, and this is sort of a bit random. I really wish it didn't use those lavender or like purple pieces up there, but I can forgive that a little bit more. Another thing on the exterior that I want to talk about is this bench design is ingenious. Genuinely, like, wow, this is amazing. I definitely don't think I will be keeping it if I put this in my city, just because I like to have the same park bench design for the whole of my city, but this part use is ingenious, absolutely stunning. Then we also still have a lantern on this corner, and I have an issue with this lantern. The reason I have an issue with the lantern is because it's using the same part as the original lantern, but then they make it different. So it's using like 2 extra pieces to make a slightly different lantern design. And I feel like if you look at the whole modular lineup, the one thing that's consistent is the lantern. So I really don't see the need to add those pieces to. I think it's really tiny, slightly petty criticism, because I could have just left those 2 pieces off, like it wouldn't have made a difference. That segues me really nicely into the instructions. So the instructions are fantastic. Brickative's instructions are always really professional, really well designed, and because we're building a modular here, it has the same amount of steps or pieces per step as you would expect from a normal modular. I would say though, some steps there is a little bit of a random piece that all of a sudden goes on the other side of the build, so make sure for every step you take all the pieces you need out first and then go and do the steps, so you know that if you have a piece left over, you need to find where that's meant to be going. Overall, I just think the exterior is really fantastic. I really like the contrast. I think this antenna tower is awesome, such a cool design. Only other thing exterior wise that I need to touch on is the back of this modular. And now guys, we know that the back of old builds are never interesting. I don't think I've ever done an old build where I was like, the back is beautifully unpolished, but there's just a few things that like just don't work. I just don't love it. I don't think I need to dwell on this very much because again, it's an old build. Like somewhere is going to be a compromise, and obviously the things that you don't love about it or the things that don't work out quite well will be hidden in the back. But yeah, it's just not very pretty, let's be honest. End of story. So let's go into the interiors, because actually this is quite an interesting one. So it looks very much like 2 separate buildings, right? You've got the radio station and you've got the flats. Now actually interior wise, they're both connected. And so when you take off the top roof, you go into the official like recording studio bit, which is just here. I feel like that's my favourite room in this whole build. It's so airy and light and beautiful, and yeah, the interiors in here are really nice. I love the design of it. I especially like the 2 little pot plants, similar one to the 2 little tiny pot plants in front of the window. I think that looks fantastic. And here you've got the other side of the building, which personally I feel like it was a bit random, and even though there's interior details in it, I wasn't really sure what I was building. I really would have liked the instructions to tell me what I was building, so it was like at the fax machine or like whatever it was, because I know there is a purposeful design to these, but I'm not intimately familiar with recording studios, and I don't really know what I built in this interior on the top floor here. What go 1 level down, and actually this is only a half floor because this is still attached to the floor below, you will find out actually that this building here and this building here are connected by basically a walk-through. It's not, there's no actual door there, but people can just basically walk into this recording studio here, which I wasn't expecting. I was expecting to have a self-contained apartment and a self-contained recording studio. So that was kind of a bit of a surprise. The way they do connect is quite ingenious. As I said, I wasn't expecting the apartment to be not an apartment, but part of the recording studio. But overall, I really do think it's kind of an interesting design here, and I'm glad that the whole building kind of works together. Now, the bottom layer of this build is kind of an interesting one because this is still a self-contained donut shop. So this doesn't connect to the rest of the build. This is just donut shop, which I personally think doesn't look very great. I have various issues with it. I think it doesn't look polished. It doesn't look... It's just not for me. I really don't like the donut shop. I'm probably extra harsh on it because obviously the original build that this came from has a donut shop as well. I can kind of see why they would have gone for it because obviously they have all those really nice printed donut tiles, but I really wish this would have just been a different type of building. And I also really don't know how I feel using that sort of like weird door as a wall piece in front of here. Like that bit of the building in particular is probably my least favourite. And as you're building this pretty early on, I had some doubts as I was going. I was like, oh, I don't really know. On a more positive note though, what I do really like is the fact that we have a similar stair build. It's such a fun design, and though we're implementing them slightly differently, there's one exterior and one interior stairs, I'm really glad we've got them. Like, they're really fun designs and really fun stairs to make, so I'm glad that's there. The reception area of the radio building is pretty interesting. It's quite sparse, but like it works. The reception desk is a bit random, but oh well. I think it makes more sense when you have an actual minifigure standing there. The one thing I do really love is this like logo plate, which is huge to kind of say where you are. I don't know, I thought that was really fun. Overall, I think this build uses a lot of really very interesting techniques that I very thoroughly enjoyed doing and absolutely just inspired me to kind of push the use of the bricks further in my own mocks. So that's always really good, and that's partially why I really like doing all builds, because when you're limited you have to be creative, and there is actually so many cool techniques that I learned from this build that I will definitely take forward and hopefully at some point use myself with my own mocks. It's not my favourite one that I've ever done. I think my favourite bit of the build definitely is this radio station, and I think some of the criticism that I'm currently putting to you is probably coming from the way that you build this building. So you start obviously with the ground floor and tiling, but then you end up building this whole building first before you move on to this bit, and actually this bit of the build in particular, if you just isolate this bit, this is where the interesting techniques are and the most polished, the most complete, and basically the most joy I had during the build is in this particular section. And because that comes really quite late in the build, I already had sort of like an apprehensive, oh, I don't really know about this build feeling before we got to the final really impressive bit. Don't get me wrong, the whole thing is really impressive. I just think that my favourite bit came so late that I already had kind of like formed an opinion by the time this came around, and it had to work really, really hard to sort of like make it turn my opinion around, as I say. If I keep this in my city, I may actually end up kind of redesigning both the bottom floor of this as well as the top floors and sort of like make it a more cohesive look. I do really want to say before I sign off that I really appreciate that there isn't a like purple building at the front. Like, they look really different, because I think if they had used the purple, it would have straight away looked too much like the police station. So because they're using two different colour schemes in this case, that's the reddish brown and the tan, and then the dark tan and the sand green together, it gives it a very different feel straight away. I would totally recommend you do this all build if you have a police station sitting there spare. So before I sign off, I just wanted to show you how many parts I had left after I did this all build. So including the figures, this is everything I had left. So actually there's quite a lot of parts there, mostly some of the 2x16 plates in white and quite a lot of tan. I hope that was helpful. I hope that wasn't too negative, because I just wanted to really like highlight the few bits that I was a bit unsure about. But if you have any questions yourself, definitely ask them in the comments. Super happy to like answer them. Obviously super massive kudos to the designer, because you are so talented and how you design these things is beyond me. It's so cool. If you do end up making this yourself, do tag me in it, because I'd love to see other people build this and see how they integrate it into the city or the changes that they make to it. But overall, if you've been curious about this build, I can definitely recommend it. You're going to totally love it. It's a really interesting old build, and it really has some New York vibes, which is not something we've seen before. Alrighty, well, I hope that was really helpful for you guys. Thank you for being here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Plenty of more videos to come your way, that's for sure. And I will see you in the next one. Bye! Howdo! Now this old build has been... Alright then.